an easy one. Iowans.commoncore.com. Follow what they're doing, and God bless Heidi. Oh man, I tell you what, a tireless champion of our rights to raise our children as we see fit. And oddly enough, I mean, it took, like 200 years of our republic to finally have a Supreme Court decision which said it, but a decade or so ago, the Supreme Court did in fact say that you as parents have the absolute right to determine and dictate the terms and conditions of your kids' education and how they're raised, your belief systems. Isn't that what America is about? Well, let's preserve it. A whole evening full of people that come on my program all the time, and a guy that I love talking to every Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning. I get 2 seconds, Ben Swann. You remember Ben? Wow, 2 Emmy Awards and 2 Edward R. Murrow Awards to his credit. You've seen him, he was on XIX for a long time doing the reality check segment, which I absolutely love. He continues on his website to this day and have millions of followers. It's Ben Swann, SWANN.com. And he's always taking a logical approach. He's looking at things objectively, which is what I absolutely love. He is equally critical of Republicans and Democrats when they both screw up and do absurd, irrational, insane things. A champion of logic and reason, Ben Swann.
That's the first time I've ever actually met Brian in person. I've talked to him for like 3 years every week, but we've never met in person. So that's cool. By the way, don't hold it against me that I came up on the left side of the stage. I know some of you noticed that. Pretend you didn't, I know you did. We're not going to fall into that paradigm tonight, right? Excited to be with you and excited to share some ideas with you. And my anticipation tonight is I'll probably make some of you angry. So that's great. I'm hoping to do that. Because if you hold so tightly to some of these archetypes that we have allowed politicians to create for us and to force us into, then I think that's one of the big reasons why liberty is disappearing in this country. And by the way, Heidi, I'm so grateful for what you're doing and Tara's doing and the work that's being done. My mom, we were talking about homeschooling, was homeschooling 10 kids in the 1970s when it was still illegal in most states in this country. And we actually lived in Texas and had to move to New Mexico because it was a crime at that time to homeschool your kids. 1978 was when I was born. You can do the math. We moved into the house I was born in 3 weeks before I was born because we had to cross the state line. And to her credit, my mother actually testified in a number of cases that led to the legalization of homeschooling in a lot of states. So the reason I bring that up to you is to say that it was not distant history when it was illegal to homeschool your kids, and I fear that we're headed back towards that direction again. A few things that I want to cover tonight. Okay, let's see if this little remote works. Does it? Does it? Oh, you have to click through for me. All right, thanks. So I want to talk to you about the idea that liberty is rising. It's rising in America, and it's a challenge, and it's a fight. And I think all of you are up for it. I certainly hope that you are. But one of the things that you follow my site, you know, is that we talk about the fact that it is not a left versus right fight in this country. And anyone who's convinced you in the media would love to convince you that it's the left side versus the right side. It's not. It is liberty versus tyranny. That is the real battle that we have to deal with. Winston Churchill once said this. He said, men occasionally will stumble over the truth, but most of them will pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing ever happened. I think that's the state of our media today, and unfortunately, it's also the viewers' fault. Now, I don't like to blame the viewers for too much, but I think what we've done is we've created a cycle in America today where most people will not go to media to be informed anymore. They actually go to media to be validated. So for some of you in here who are Fox News watchers, okay, I forgive you, that's all right. If you watch Fox They go there because they expect that Fox is going to tell them what they already know. And if someone at that network doesn't say what, none of you, of course, none of you, but some people expect them to say, then there will be hell to be paid. And the same is true for CNN, and the same is true for MSNBC. They have become victims of their own left-right paradigm. But truth is somewhere between that left and right paradigm. Let's skip ahead. I want to show you a couple things. I want to talk very quickly tonight about 3 small issues, and I think they're small comparatively, and show you how that's being manipulated, and then talk to you about a big picture issue that I think is the biggest issue that you, in the Tea Party, need to be combating in America today. I'm wondering if you thought about it before. We'll skip ahead. First thing is the drug war and cannabis, and the rise of cannabis across the country. Some of you sitting here, even the sight of that image bothers you at your core, and that's okay. That's perfectly all right. Others of you will say, actually, it's not that bad of a thing. And we can debate and we can argue, we can go back and forth. But here's something fairly interesting. In the state of Ohio, how many of you know that in the state of Ohio, drug legalization for medical use and recreational use is coming to a ballot near you? It is on its way. You can clap for it, but that's okay. This room will be very divided about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And you guys can argue all about it. And here's the thing. This issue polls higher in Ohio. Marijuana for medical use and for recreational use, it polls higher than anyone running for president in 2016. That's politics, okay? It is an issue that it is going to have to be dealt with. It's got to be discussed, and there's a lot of very important issues. And I will tell you this very quickly. For those of you who see it and immediately your first response is absolutely not, no way, this is never acceptable on any level, I want you to go home at some point this week and I want you to Google and I want you to search CBD oil and epilepsy. And I want you to do some research about what's happening with children with epilepsy. We're not smoking weed, but an extract of oil that comes from cannabis, from marijuana, from hemp, that is curing epilepsy in children. Those of you who are Bible-believing people, believe this. I'm not a preacher of cannabis, but I will tell you that if you believe your Bible, it says that God made everything with seed in it and placed it in the ground. It is not Satan's plans. So don't buy into the media part of it. We'll talk about more about that later. Let's skip ahead. There's a reason I'm bringing this up to you. Militarization of police. This is a big issue going on around the country right now, and a lot of people talking about it. A lot of people demonizing police officers. A lot of people think that I demonize police officers, and I don't. If you're a cop or if you work in law enforcement, I have incredible respect, and I hope everyone in this room does, for what you do, putting yourself in harm's way. But kids, there is a problem in this country with policing and how it's being treated. And to ignore that problem, and especially when we throw it into that left-right paradigm, when we stir it up and we disseminate it to people on both sides, we miss the important issues. The biggest issue here, and I've been talking about it for 3 years now, is the policing for profit that is happening in this country, where local municipalities are using peace officers not to keep the peace, but to collect revenue and creating budget line items in order to pay for stuff by issuing tickets. That is a problem that needs to be dealt with. And then the third one, and we just have so little time, so much to say, is the issue of not just the rise of ISIS, but the over-militarization of what's happening around the world, the money that's being lost and absorbed, and these ongoing wars and conflicts. And for those of you who believe in limited government and in the Constitution, how we are treating these wars and so-called conflicts around the world without declarations of war, and essentially allowing our president to anywhere he wants to go. And it's not President Obama, it's the office of the president being allowed to use the military as if it is a private police force is a violation of our Constitution, and it is destroying the foundation. we know if you break away from that left-right paradigm that we can, with rational minds and clear discussion, we can debate how the military machine is being used around the world without demonizing the men and women who are in our military who are putting themselves in harm's way. And we need to honor them and question our leaders. All right, I want to talk quickly about socialism. How many of you believe in this room that the United States of America is headed towards socialism? How many of you believe that? Good, okay, this is the only time I'll try to trick you tonight. Really? Headed towards socialism? That's what you believe? That's where we're going? Because if you really believe that we're headed that way, the year is probably 1888, right? The United States of America is deeply ingrained and engulfed in a socialist system. We are a socialist country, period. Some of us enjoy the benefits of that. Some of us will say, I'm against it, but I'm also kind of for it with some things. And we can have a long discussion about socialism and what it looks like. And I remind people that, you know, for those of you who are Christians, I'm a Christian, so I bring up Christianity a lot. But for those of you who are Christians, the very first Christian movement in the world was actually a socialist movement. Right? The book of Acts says that the people took everything that they owned, they sold it all, they took the money of the apostles, and they said, divide it equally among us. They created a socialist movement. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that. So one of the problems we have in the media is the way we take certain words, we demonize them, and we club people over the head with them. Because you're a socialist, okay? You're a fascist. And we give these different terms and we just call people names with them without looking at what it actually means. It's important to know that in a voluntary system, there's nothing wrong with socialism. If you volunteer to be a part of that kind of a system, good for you. Now the book of Acts does not say the apostles went to the people, robbed them of all of their stuff, and distributed it equally, right? So there's an important distinction between a voluntary system of socialism and a forced system of socialism. We can debate about what we have in this country. Most of it's forced. But this is not the problem that we face in this country today. Socialism is not our big boogeyman that you need to be looking out for. Even though media keeps telling you it's what you need to be looking out for. And even though it's what Fox News keeps telling you to look out for. And they do tell you to look out for it. There are going to be a lot of people who refer to Hillary Clinton in the next months as being a socialist. She is, but so are most of the guys she's running against. That's truth, and it ain't pretty. So here's what we really need to watch out for, because the real problem in America today is that Republicans and Democrats are the same in that as parties, they are fascists. That's also true. Now, some of you again, there's a knot in your stomach right now, and you're saying, oh, I'm going to throw that guy off the stage and say that again. I want to talk to you about what fascism actually is. Let's skip ahead, because George Orwell, well, first we'll talk about what fascism is not. Okay, it's not racism. If you think fascism is racism, then Common Core's got you all screwed up. White supremacy, it is not white supremacy, and it is not the Nazi Party, right? Even though the Nazis were fascists, white supremacists can be fascists, and so can racists. But it is not what fascism is. George Orwell, in 1946, wrote these words. He said, the word fascism is almost entirely meaningless. There are people who recklessly fling the word fascist in every direction, and they attach, at any rate, an emotional significance to it. By fascism, they mean, roughly speaking, something cruel, unscrupulous, arrogant, anti-liberal, anti-working class. Except for the relatively small number of fascist sympathizers, almost any English person would accept bully as a synonym for fascist. Those are very clapping. That was 1946, and that hasn't changed. Have you seen the pictures of Obama with a little Hitler mustache? Have you seen the pictures of Bush with a little Hitler mustache? If you share those on Facebook, stop sharing them on Facebook. Because it demeans the reality of the word fascist. It turns it into a Nazi symbol. But fascism did not belong to the Nazis. Who was the father of fascism? Benito Mussolini. Go ahead. If we were going to get a definition for fascism, we would go to Benito Mussolini, not only created it, but gave it its name, naming it after the fasces that the Roman senators would carry around, bundles of sticks with an axe head in them. Fascism, he once said, should rightly be called corporatism, as it is a merger of corporate and government power. Now, some of you have seen this before, and if you've seen this quote before, I know where you've seen it, because it's the only place it's ever shown up. It was in a documentary called From Freedom to Fascism by a guy named Aaron Rousseau. Now, the problem is that when Aaron Rousseau created that documentary and included this quote, no historian since then has been able to find it. No one knows where it came from or where he got it from. However, historians do say, studying this quote, that the meaning of it is accurate. That even if these exact words cannot be found, that is a correct use of fascism or definition for fascism. And so Mussolini probably would have said something similar to it. Now the problem we have is we get hung up on that word, corporatism. And when people see that, they think it's the merger, Apple and the government together. That's what we think it is, right? But it's not. Go ahead and skip ahead. The word, if you go back into the Italian, is actually corporativissimo. It is not corporatism defined as a corporation. Corporativissimo literally means, is translated as all of us, the collective, the corporate. So what was Mussolini actually talking about? 1926, in the Doctrine of Fascism, he wrote, "In the fascist state, the individual is not suppressed, but rather multiplied. Just as in a regiment, a soldier is not weakened, but multiplied by the number of its comrades. The fascist state," he said, "organizes the nation, but it leaves sufficient scope to individuals. It has limited, useless, or harmful liberties, and has preserved those that are essential. It cannot be the individual who decides in this matter, but only the state." That is the United States of America today, is it not? That is what we have become. The fascist state essentially says, you as an individual have a right to own property as opposed to the communist state where you didn't. In the fascist state, you can have a home, you can have land. However, if the government needs that land, if the state needs it, forget the state. If the collective needs your land, then we have a right to take it. Because the individual is never more important than the collective. And when the U.S. Supreme Court decides that eminent domain should be the law of the land, because the collective can benefit even if it's your private property, we can take it from you, they have become a fascist court. It's not about slinging mud or calling names or trying to give you something to add to your repertoire of names to call people. It's recognizing that there is a very real political philosophy that is at play in our country right now. And both our political parties at their head believe in this mantra. That you as an individual have no real rights. That you as an individual don't matter. And so when we talk about issues, whether they be issues of overtaxation or policing for profit or what you put into your body, when we talk about those issues, as long as it doesn't harm the children, that's what the politicians will tell you. Won't they? But what about the kids? They don't give a rip about the kids. It's a manipulation that says you have no rights and will take from you any individual right you have in the name of the collective. We'll skip ahead quickly. I know I'm short on time here. I got to get done. Useless or harmful freedoms, drug war, privacy, issues like Bitcoin or the right for you to be able to look at other currencies than the U.S. Reserve fiat dollar. Those are issues to consider. The real fight in our country is not one of symptoms. We have to fight the disease. Every right in our Bill of Rights, I challenge you to go back and read it, is about personal freedom. It is not about corporate freedom. Last thing I would tell you, freedom of association, freedom of exchange, freedom of behavior without coercion. I leave you with this quote. Marcus Aurelius once said this. He said, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." And what I would tell you, Cincinnati Tea Party tonight, is that there are a lot of issues of individual freedom that you need to consider over the next months and years. And what media and politicians are going to tell you is that you cannot trust the person sitting next to you with their own freedom. They'll use it poorly. They'll use it dangerously. They'll impede on your life. And they will use a tactic of fear to pit people against each other. The ugly part of freedom is also the most beautiful part, which is that I don't have to like how you use your freedom, to stand for it and to fight for it. Thank you so much.